Good morning, football fans. This is the Pigskin Prognosis Championship Weekend Recap with myself, co-host Sully, and here with the other half of the podcast, Zach. Say hello.
Hello, I'm the other half.
Starting off with a little high energy this morning. I like it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, got a good amount of stuff to talk about. We got my favorite category. It's ZSBOTTW. If you don't know what that is, stick around. You'll find out. It's if you're a recurring member, you already know what it is. We'll talk. We'll talk about some draft talk for a couple of the spots that got locked up after this last weekend. Some coaching hires that happened already. Some that are a little rumored. We'll talk about just exactly what those teams are looking at, and then we'll end it off with just some highlights and recaps, stuff like that, and just some random stuff that we want to talk about. So, as usual, stick around. Hopefully, you guys will find this entertaining as much as we enjoy recording it. And yeah, we'll go ahead and get right back into it. So Zach, we'll start off with how was your week?
My week was good. Recovering from surgery is going well. Can't wait to get the stitches out. So it's gonna still be a pain in the ass, but overall, yeah, decent recovery. And you and I both raced in the iRacing 24-hour race, so that the weekend was kind of hectic for us. Very weird sleep schedule.
Yeah, we did better than I thought. Than I thought we were going to. Only 197 incidences out of 24 hours, which isn't terrible. And I think
that's not
almost
bad.
100 of those were just me and you combined. So not terrible.
Over. I think I had 55 and you had 44. So
yeah, so a shade under 100 were our fault. So, but not bad. We ended up finishing 17 out of 38 teams that raced in our division. We were the lowest split, but still, hey, I'll take it. We finished the race, which not a lot of people say can say that they did that last weekend.
And we made a good push in the last couple hours for 2 positions, so we made up like 6 laps on those 2 positions.
Yeah, that was good. It
was fun. That's where the excitement comes into. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, I was sleeping while y'all were running that shit, so that was good to wake up and see. But here's for football. So we're gonna go ahead and kick it off with, since there is no bye week. So I mean, there's 28 other bye weeks. People that aren't playing, people that have been eliminated, etc. There's no fantasy updates, since who the hell runs a league in a championship weekend? I don't think anybody, unless you're doing daily, which I do and haven't won anything out of lately. But anyway, my favorite segment, everybody knows it, ZSBOTTW, which, as I said in the intro, you already know what it is for those returning customers. For those that are new, it's Zach's shitty bets of the week, where Zach's going to go ahead and give you some bets that he puts in, and I'm going to go ahead and let Zach take it, and we'll go from there, just so you guys can hopefully win, more than likely lose, some money on whatever bets Zach thinks are going to hit.
Yeah, so I think I had a pretty good amount of success this weekend, but it wasn't based off of anything that I picked from last week's podcast. I went more in depth and picked like over unders on like receiving yards and shit like that. So maybe next season I'll start including some things like that, because I had some decent success on some parlays and round robins, and made some marginal returns, which was really, really good. Nice. But since this week we've only got 2 games, I went a little bit further in depth to kind of prepare for doing that next season, to give us a little bit more of like over unders and whatnot. But this week I just picked some touchdown scores that I think are going to hit. We have 4 really good teams that are meeting this weekend, and very powerful offenses, which we'll talk about probably a little bit later. But for the first game of the weekend, Washington is in Philadelphia. I picked Philadelphia to beat Washington by 5.5 point spread. The total for that is -112. And then for touchdown scores in the game, I picked Saquon Barkley because he is just going off this postseason. And with Jalen Hurts getting a little injured, knee injury last weekend, I think he might be probably having a little bit more workload. So I expect him to at least score a touchdown. And then on the Washington side of the ball, I I expect Terry McLaurin to make some waves against Philadelphia and him to score a touchdown as well. So the odds for Saquon are minus 205, and for Terry McLaurin is plus 125. So that's a decent return for you there. In the Buffalo at Kansas City game, I think Buffalo is going to cover the underdog spread of 1.5, which is minus 115, and 2 touchdown scores, one for each side. I think we're going to have James Cook score a touchdown. I wasn't sure. I was back and forth between Cook and Allen. I think Allen's going to have to get very involved on the trick plays side of the things, especially towards the end zone, more in the red zone of things. So he might score a rushing touchdown, but I felt like James Cook was more of a secure bet. And for Kansas City, my pick was Travis Kelce, since he has somehow come alive here in the postseason.
As he's done the last 2 seasons for some fucking reason.
Yeah, but I mean, just after the season, we talked about it last week. Just after the season he's had, I think it's just kind of a surprise to see him. I think he had like over 100 yards receiving last week. So yeah, those are my 2 touchdown picks for that game. So the James Cook is plus 135 and Kelsey is plus 125. And then if you like to do some parlays, I got all the totals here for you. If you just pick the 2 teams to win, so if you pick Philly to beat the spread of minus 5.5 and Buffalo plus 1.5, the odds for that are plus 269. So a $10 bet will net you $36.95. If you do all 4 touchdown scores, the odds for that are plus 1685, meaning a $10 bet will win you 178.50. And if you're deciding to go brave, and trust me, I feel bad for you, but all 6 together have an odds of plus 55.25. So a bet of $10 will win 562.50. So if you're feeling brave, 6-pick parlay for both games is plus 55.25, which isn't really bad for 4 touchdowns and 2 spreads. It's a pretty decent odds right there. I like it. So
yeah, $10.
We'll see how we do, and then going into the Super Bowl weekend, I'll put together a nice spread of over unders, since everyone's going to be balls out for that game.
At least you would hope.
Some good numbers for that one. So
hell yeah.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
That's
so
it. Zach Shitty Bets the Week.
My favorite segment, and it's mostly just because of the name, but still. So speaking of Super Bowl weekend, all right. So we're coming down to the end of the cream of the crop is what everyone would call it. The 4 teams going into the AFC and NFC Championship this weekend. Who are your pets? Your picks to win? I mean, you obviously picked Buffalo to cover the spread, so I'm assuming KC and Philly is who you're projecting to go. Out of those 2 teams, then who do you think wins the Super Bowl? Then, if we're calling it now, because I know a couple weeks ago you picked the Vikings. Hell, a couple weeks ago I picked the Lions, and here we are.
Yeah. So I was actually a little surprised. I will say my pick originally, I picked my favorite of the remainder, which was the Vikings. But my overall pick to go would have been either Texas or the Lions. And unfortunately, Texas and the Lions are both knocked out.
Yeah.
But so watching the Texans, I keep saying Texas, it's Texans. Watching the Texans game really kind of showed me that KC is vulnerable, and they know it, because it's just been a year of scraping by, and they continue to just scrape by. The unfortunate part about it was that Texas didn't show up pretty much at all. They scored 1 touchdown, missed the extra point, but other than that, they were limited to 3 field goals and 1 touchdown, which isn't going to do you very good in a postseason play, especially when you see Washington and the Lions putting up, what was it, 38-45 was the final? And then Philly destroying the Rams, which Philly looked dead in the water for a while, and the Rams looked like they had a shot. But, high-scoring games just all around, except on the KC front, which I think that Buffalo scraping by in the round against the Ravens, where the Ravens should have tied the game. It comes down to the Mark Andrews dropped pass. It's just that's just something that that's the basic fundamental football that we're talking about. And I mentioned that last week that fundamental football is something that's going to win you games, and that is one of the basics. Catching that ball would have at least tied it. I don't know what would have happened if it, at the end of regulation or it went into overtime, but I could say that you lose the game. I can confidently say that Baltimore lost the game because they didn't catch that. That doesn't mean that they would have won the game had he made the catch, but he's definitely not going to win the game if he doesn't make the catch.
And that's the thing, too. You can't quite tell because I think they still had like over a minute left in that game with Josh Allen,
and
they had
Josh Allen
is
is known for making really good comebacks at the end of the game. It's just, that's something that you can't expect. You can't rely on something like that that mistake to happen. And if I were watching the game, I missed the game. If I were able to watch that game live after he scored the touchdown, I would have very well expected them to make that 2-point conversion, but he didn't, and he was wide open too. It wasn't like a bad pass or anything. It hit him in the stomach, and he dropped it.
Yeah, I know. I was reading a thing. I think Mark Andrews in the playoffs had 0 touchdowns, 8 drops. For a dude that you expect, who at the beginning of the year, I mean, we kind of talked about it when we first started the podcast that Mark Andrews was almost non-existent in that offense. It was Isaiah Likely for a while,
right?
And then he kind of, toward the end of the year, it went back to what the status quo was of Andrews taking over the the tight end position, being the number 1 tight end again on the team, and Likely kind of just taking the back seat like it was all of last season, when he wasn't hurt. But I was expecting Andrews to come through and come up clutch, like we've expected. And I know, it was snowing and cold, and a ball becomes slick and shit when it's snowy and cold. I get that, but the gloves that a lot of these receivers are wearing, I mean, you're basically wearing fucking glove with glue on it, basically at that point. And I don't know. It was just surprising, and I know Lamar Jackson at the post game conference kind of was frustrated and was swearing on live TV that granted he wasn't blaming Mark Andrews. He was like it was a team effort, and Lamar had a fumble and an interception that kind of shifted the tide for in the Bills' favor, but he took just as much responsibility as I feel he should have too for that. So it's not just Mark Andrews specifically, but yeah, that drop was unfortunate at a very little point in that game.
Yeah, very key spot in the game, exactly.
Yeah, and like you said, you nobody knows how it would have gone had it gone into overtime. If it would have made it to overtime, what would have happened. But
right,
I mean, if you don't catch the ball, we don't even have that opportunity to talk about it. So
exactly, and that's something I was talking about.
Yeah, coulda, woulda, shoulda type moment, but unfortunate. It does make me happy though that the receiver for the Panthers that got traded to the Ravens that refused to go in a few weeks back, and then they dropped him, got picked up by the Texans. Texans dropped him, and then he went back to the Ravens and couldn't play the rest of the postseason, and then they get eliminated. So that makes me slightly happy on that front. But that's personal vendettas aside against receivers that don't want to play football. Yeah, that's my opinion. But all right, draft time. So 28 spots out of 32 are locked up as far as what we're projecting, with assuming no trades or anything. So 25 through 28, 29 and 30 will be this weekend after that's all said and done. So 25th is Texas, 26th is the Rams, 27 Baltimore, 28 Detroit. So you said these were all these where I'm reading our script. All this came from, you said NFL.com's?
Yeah, it was NFL.com. They're basing their biggest needs off of a little bit like a 2-sentence injuries and losing players throughout the offseason suggestions. So
okay, so per this, Texans need a wide receiver, which All right, fair. Because I'm pretty sure. What was it? Nico Collins tore it, or was that Tank Dell that like blew his knee out? I think it was
It,
Tank Dell.
yeah, it was Tank Dell knee injury, and they're also losing Stephon Diggs and Robert Woods.
Uh,
Um, they're both of those guys are going up to free agency. Whether they actually re-sign or not is up to the black hole of off season. So
yeah, which we're getting close to. So yeah, I can see that happening too. They definitely need an offensive line. You can't get sacked 8 times in a game and expect to be able to do anything offensively too. So I would say some O line if they can't keep any of those receivers. But yeah, Rams. I'll let you speak on the Rams. I know I'm a big Matthew Stafford fan, but
I like Matthew Stafford coming out of Detroit. I like Jared Goff in Detroit more than I liked Matthew Stafford there. But just having like another protection for Matt Stafford, I think, is going to be huge on the offensive side of things. And then the defense after Donald left is kind of lackluster, and they're all kind of young on the pass rush side of things. And I don't know, they don't necessarily need like defensive ends or edge rushers or whatnot, but it says their biggest need is a cornerback or a linebacker. So more of that secondary level of defense, which could explain a lot of mistakes that happened this postseason from the Rams against Philadelphia. I mean, just seeing Saquon Barkley have 2 runs of 60+ yards twice against the
yeah,
Rams this season. 4 runs of 60+ yards just explains how poor the entire defensive level, primarily, the front end, up on the line, and the secondary of the linebackers and cornerbacks and whatnot. But yeah, I think that they're really missing someone key, and I don't know if it's going to be a rookie that they pick up that they expect to, uh, just become the next protege. I don't think you're going to find that with a 26 pick, but
no.
I don't really think they're going to trade up for anything crazy either.
Mm,
So, but
yeah,
I expect the Rams to stick with Matthew Stafford. And
I mean that's if Stafford doesn't retire.
yeah, I don't think he's going to retire either. I think he knows that he's still got a little bit of football left in him.
I know. I saw a thing
He's
too that they asked. They're like, "Hey, like, do you think this is the final one?" And he's like, "It sure does feel that way, But I mean, he's been beat up a lot in Detroit. He got beat up a good amount too in LA, and he's 30. I think he'll be 37 sometime next month. I think halfway through the month next month. So the dude that's taking the beats and bangs and bruises and stuff that he's had and played through it and everything else. But I'd like to see Stafford keep playing. I really would. I say kid. The man can still sling the rock. So I think it'd be fun to see him keep playing out in LA for at least one more season, and
yeah.
maybe get somebody on defense to help them out a little bit. And their O line too is fucking trash against the Eagles, but
Oh yeah.
uh, yeah. So I think that would help out a little bit, get him some help, and
But he's one of those guys that he can take a hit. He's one of those very few quarterbacks that I've seen that really play through injuries. I mean, shit, it was the one of his biggest moments, if not his biggest moment of his career, was when he like broke his shoulder against the Browns and he still threw for a touchdown or a 2 point
yeah,
conversion or whatever it was.
yeah. Can't be like took him out, can't put him back in real quick. Yeah, but still though, yeah, it starts getting it starts wearing on you after a while, But
Sure, yeah. I mean, anybody, shit, even at my ripe age of 28, I haven't played any professional sports and I feel like I'm 50, so I can't even imagine what these guys feel like for after playing for he's been in the league for what, 15, 16 years, something like that. So drafted
yeah,
in
pretty close
'09,
to.
first overall by Georgia or Detroit out of Georgia.
Yeah.
He's been through it.
No, two dudes here with recovering shoulder surgeries that are talking about fucking injuries and shit. And we don't even play professional fucking football, so
Yeah,
we'll
no,
just put that
absolutely
up
not.
there.
Yeah, right.
But but yeah, and I'm hoping he comes back. I mean, but I don't know. I just kind of got that feeling too, like he said that it's gonna be like that was the final hurrah. But we'll see. Hopefully, he doesn't make any announcements anytime soon and makes it over the summertime and help us get us some content for the summer. But next, the Ravens. Per this, according to them, they need the same thing. Per the tankathon.com website, which we referenced last week, which we'll put the link back down and below on this one. They're saying the Ravens pick up an offensive tackle from
Yeah.
Oregon specifically.
I didn't see. This one doesn't tell me who, but yeah, it just tells about their needs. Yeah, I think they try to pick up another rookie offensive tackle because they really have a solid offensive line. They found a decent rookie in his name is Roger Rosegarden at right tackle. So if they can double that need or fill that hole going into next season, then that really kind of protects Jackson a good amount because they're not going to get rid of him anytime soon.
No. And Henry will be there for a while too, so if you can keep that two-headed monster going, then
yeah. Who's this? Josh Cornerly. That's the guy. Oregon.
Yeah, the Oregon OT. But I mean, obviously, all of this is a fucking moot point if trades happen and people move up and everything else. But
Yeah.
the way it sits, we'll see how it goes. And finally, for draft talk, the Detroit Lions. I mean, I know we got.
What do you think? Detroit
Lions. I feel like you need someone that's going to complement Aiden Hutchinson when he comes back.
That's exactly what I was
really
thinking.
do.
And but he's a solid. He's like a one-man army just in himself.
Yes, I mean hell up until I think it was beginning of January, pretty much he was still leading the team in sacks, and the dude hadn't played since October.
Yeah.
So and then God forbid if he gets hurt again next season, or obviously you're going to kind of slow ramp him up. I would assume coming off that leg injury, you're still going to want somebody out there to help, right? Yeah. And so I think that Tankathon website has Texas A&M edge rusher Shamar Stewart is who they're projecting them to the Lions to pick, which would make sense. I mean, their defense was the main issue pretty much ever since Hutchinson got taken out. I know they had a bunch of defensive injuries, but I mean they did look good against the Vikings, but as we saw last week, or I guess now 2 weeks ago, the Vikings didn't look amazing whatsoever. The last 2 weeks, they didn't look good against Detroit, and they didn't look good against the Rams when they played them. So that might have just been the Rams or the Vikings, showing their true colors, basically. That they were a super overly hyped team, and it looked like the Lions defensively just kind of figured it out. And then, I mean, hell, they let up 45 points by Washington get scored on them. So
yeah, something crazy like that. Talking.
Yeah, so defensively is the main issue. I would say at the moment their wide receiving core is good. Obviously, we know Sonic and Knuckles are, the 1-2 punch that hell I feel like a lot of teams, if not all, wish they had in the backfield. You got Sam Laporta at tight end. I mean, you got weapons offensively. You got Jared Goff, who, I mean, this was like 2 years ago. I was dogging on Jared Goff, but this year he put up some good numbers, was able to make some deep throws, which I always made fun of for not really being able to do, as if I could go out and throw the ball 60 yards, which I can't. But still, like I said, I think defensively is the main issue. Their secondary hasn't been great. The defensive line's been hit or miss. And it just you're not going to go out and win games, when you're letting a team score 45 points on you at a time. And that's why they were one of the higher scoring offenses, because they needed to, because they couldn't stop anybody. So, but that'll be a team I don't see trading around anybody, like trading up to get higher up in the draft, but I could see them maybe making some offense or some waiver wire off season pickups to try to boast that team. I don't know who's available. All total free agents coming in this offseason for defense. That's not, you know, the tail end of their career, but it'll be interesting to see. Because yeah, I definitely think they need some help on the defensive side of the ball, even when Hutchinson comes back.
I agree, and it's almost like they needed to add another, couple different people at the same time to kind of cover what he does, because Hutchinson does both pass rush and pass defense, and he does it so well. He's just a menace no matter what, around the quarterback or dropping back. Not like he drops back in coverage that much, but he can do it. He's a very versatile.
There you go.
That's the word I'm looking for.
You
So,
did it.
but yeah, I agree with you. I think that they get somebody to complement his style of play, and it just gives you something else to think about on that defensive end. Now their next projected, their second round pick will be a wide receiver. It says for the Lions.
Interesting.
So I don't know, what all that this is all just projections and shit, but and they don't have a third round pick, so
Interesting. I did not know.
who knows?
Yeah, I'll say. I mean, shit, we're not gonna know for another like 3 months. Because I think draft is like April 15th, April 20th, somewhere around that time
It's like
frame.
the
I think.
24th.
Yeah, but
Mistaken, but yeah, the next two rounds, the next two picks will get locked up this weekend by one of the or two of the four teams losing out into going into the Super Bowl. So we can talk about those next two potential picks
yeah,
next
yeah.
next week's podcast.
Next week, sir. Which I'm gonna go ahead and put out there. Let's go Washington and let's go Buffalo.
Yeah, that's why I've picked. I didn't answer your question earlier. I picked the Buffalo underdog spread, but I think Buffalo's going to win. I mean, if they win outright, then I'll win my money anyways.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's true.
I'm looking forward for that.
Sorry, Kev, if you're listening. Yeah. So coaching stuff. Really not a whole hell of a lot. This one just happened actually today. And it was the Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, who's everyone thought was going to leave last year, but I think had some unfinished business, losing the NFC Championship game last year. And then hopefully was going to try to come back and obviously get a Super Bowl with Detroit. Was hired as the Bears head coach. So I got a two-part question for you. How much do you think that helps the Bears head coaching? Or not head coaching, but their coaching staff in general? And how much do you think it's going to, on the flip side of it, hurt the Lions next season?
Okay, so I'm going to answer your second part first. I think that it's going to hurt Detroit a lot. They have a lot of offensive weapons, but a lot of their play style and balls of steel came from both Ben Johnson and their head coach Dan Campbell. So just knowing that their offensive coordinator's gone, but Dan Campbell's still there, thankfully. I think that changes their play style a little bit, and they might have to change up, a little bit of their aggressive, fourth down calls that Dan Campbell really likes going for until he gets some confidence in his next offensive coordinator, whoever that may be. But I mean, you're losing a lot of points, average points per game, and a lot of yards per game in that offensive coordinator. He was leading the league in points per game at 33.2 and second in yards at 409.5. So a lot of their success can be is contributed because of his position as offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on who they pick as their next OC, I don't know. I don't foresee it getting better, and I don't really think it'll stay on pace. It'll definitely get worse. So I think this was kind of the high point for Detroit. This was, like you said, he could have left last year, and I was honestly expecting him to, but I'm glad he stuck around because he wanted to win the Super
Yep.
Bowl with the Lions, and they had a legitimate chance. It's just sad that they didn't get a chance to even get to the championship this year.
Yeah.
But to answer your first part of that question, moving on to his new chapter in Chicago, he's got a lot of talent there. Caleb Williams is a quarterback that I wasn't expecting to be so inconsistent. But he's also got a lot of um, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, I say experience, but veterancy. You've got DJ Moore, who's played a handful of seasons. He came over from the Panthers. DeAndre Swift has been with a couple of teams. Rome Odunze, who has been in the league for 1 year. He was a first round pick by the Lions. So you got your two rookies that are going to be there for at least 3 more years, you're hoping for.
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift even played with the Lions. So I don't know if he was there during Ben Johnson's time. I think he was.
I think he was,
drafted
yeah.
in 2020 or something. So he was. He was there. So those two getting back together might create some, good opportunities for the offense and kind of spark the light in Chicago. And I mean, even going into the draft, Chicago's picked draft number 10 right now, I think. Their first round, they're going to pick offensive lineman. Their second round, they're going to pick an edge. And their third round, they're projecting to pick a running back. So,
I mean, hell, they should have 2 picks in their second round because they still have Carolinas from that trade.
they do. You're right. Yep, that's 39. So that's going to be their number 8 pick in the second round.
So.
But yeah, you're right. Thanks for catching that one. But yeah, I think the positive swing is going to be in the favor of Chicago for sure, especially with them taking a head coaching position. It's just I'd like to see how the Lions fill in the gap on that offensive coordinator side of things, especially because they're not projecting to pick up any offensive weapons in their draft early on. So.
Yeah. So would you put the Bears as either a front runner or potentially a second, like a runner up to take that division then next year? Then, or do you still think that the head coach isn't the main piece that's missing from that team?
For the Bears, you mean like
yes?
Okay, so the head coach can only do so much coaching. You can't change the outcome of plays on the field. You can just train your guys to the best of your ability and hope that they perform every week. But I think it's going to help. But I don't foresee them making a charge to the top of the leaderboard. It may be third place finish this year. Maybe either the Vikings or the Lions falter down to that mid pack or bottom pack, and Green Bay takes over as the champion for that division. I don't know. I'm not. I'm tired. I can't really make that like call without really knowing all the other ins and outs, because I'm really not knowing how the Vikings are standing on their players and how Green Bay's looking on their guys. So I guess we won't really know like until the offseason swings around, where everybody starts signing and everybody goes crazy with their offseason moves like we had this year, where Derrick Henry goes to Baltimore and Saquon goes to Philly, and once that offseason takes a full effect and people start signing with their teams and leaving their other teams, that's where we can start. I can definitively estimate.
All right, so I'll ask you that question again too once we get into the full swing of the offseason. Then, since
and that's probably a good opportunity for us to dissect all the divisions once we get some bigger, major movers on the offseason signings and stuff like that
Yeah.
too, and
Their
even after the
retirements
draft.
and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving to the next head coaching vacancy that's we kind of touched on last week, Deion Sanders, prime time, Colorado Buffs current head coach, and his son declaring for the draft. I mean, granted, he already declared. Shadur Sanders, like I said, we talked about this last week a little bit, but the talks sound like they're increasing by the Cowboys to make Deion the head coach. It sounds like they've had a couple phone calls since last week when we talked about it. I'm also seeing rumors that the Cowboys or at least Jerry Jones, I don't know about the whole organization, but at least the owner is okay with potentially taking like $140 million cap hit to trade Dak Prescott and get Shadur and to bring in Deion at the same time. What do you think as far as, what are your thoughts on the Cowboys basically, signing Dak this year and then basically being like, have a good one. We'll kick you to the curb if we can get Deion.
I think Cowboy fans are still living in a fantasy land if they think they can get Shadur Sanders and Deion Sanders. It's not going to happen. I'm saying that with full confidence now because if you look at their recent history, they're requesting to interview everybody and their mother for the head coaching position. And you all know that if the fantasy of Shadur and Deion coming to the Cowboys and playing and coaching for them, that Jerry Jones would have just made the decision already and just been like, he's coming. He's one of the greatest players that ever played. He's an ex-Cowboy. He's, prime time. And they'd be probably working on trading up for the draft if there's not already something in the books, which I don't know what they have that Tennessee, I keep mixing up those two damn teams, that Tennessee or Cleveland is going to want to give up that quarterback pick, or at least a chance. And really right now it's projected that Shadur goes to Tennessee. That does not make sense to me. Now,
yeah,
the potential for them to split and Shadur goes somewhere and Deion comes to coach for Cowboys is much more realistic, but still something that I don't see happening, based purely off of the fact that they're asking to interview like 4 different guys that I've seen in the last 2 weeks, not even 5. So they're if it was said and done, they would have interviewed Deion and signed him almost immediately because there's no harm in signing him now, right? There's no reason to wait. There's no reason to interview a bunch of other coaches and drive the price up for Deion or whatever. So I think it's just I don't think it's gonna happen, and I think that Cowboys fans need to pull their head out of their ass and start thinking realistically.
Yeah, I mean, I get that you want to generate talk about your team. Obviously, and as the saying goes, is no publicity is bad publicity type thing. So, and it always turns into the same shit every year. Like, oh, like this is our year, this is our year, this is the team, blah blah blah. And then obviously Dak goes down, and for
Every
the
year, dude,
majority of
like
the season,
clockwork, bro.
yeah, and or CD gets hurt or whatever, it ends up just becoming another excuse. And Deion's already said, obviously, money talks, right? Like we all know that. But Deion's already said, last year, Colorado's where he wants to be. He's gonna have a hard time coaching grown ass men that are getting paid to do this. Which I think we kind of touched on a little bit last week with college kind of being the same way now. Like you're not a student athlete anymore in the college. If you're an NIL deal, you're a fucking professional athlete. And it's going to be hard. It's a little easier to do, I think, in college now because, I mean, he's already done it in Colorado. There's a couple clips out that said, hey, if you're a senior and if you don't play, we take your paycheck.
Wow.
Like, he's flat out said it. He's like, you will not get paid.
That's insane.
Like flat out has said it, which I get it, right? Like I mean,
mean,
if you're getting
yeah.
paid to do it, right? If you're getting paid to play football and you don't play football, or like for college, if your grades suck and you can't play, you're now hurting the team. So Dion, since it's not like, all right, cool, you're already not playing, so it's not like he can pull you from the game now. Okay, cool. I'm gonna take your paycheck then. You're hurting my team, which is hurting me coaching, right? So I'm gonna take your paycheck, or at least some of it.
So my argument against it is the NIL deals aren't focused on performance all the time, right? They're focused on hype, who's going to generate the most views and revenue to your brand and to your product that you're promoting with that player. And you got it all the time, right? Like you see ex-professional athletes in commercials all the time. That's kind of what I would consider to be like an NIL deal, is it's just for publicity, it's not for performance. So saying if you're not going to play, I'm going to take your NIL money is, in my opinion, I think it's kind of stupid. But I
It
can
might not have been NIL money, but it could have been the stuff that like the school was giving the players.
understand it to an extent of you're hurting the team and you need to be a team player. But then the other factor of it is too is some of these college guys aren't all gonna declare for the draft. So what's the point in forcing them to play if they're not going to go to the draft? If they don't want to play, if they want to play their 4 years and get their college degree and move on, what's the point of forcing them to play? They could end up with some kind of permanent injury that derails their career intentions. I don't know what it is, but you know it's a very broad statement, but that's my side of the argument.
Yeah,
Why
no,
I
I get you.
disagree with it.
But like at that point too, I feel like more than likely, I feel like if you don't have aspirations to play at a professional level, I feel like you would be more willing to play or get good grades and stuff, just because of the fact that like you have that feeling of like, this is, especially if you're a senior, right? Like, this is my last time to get on the field, or this is my
Yeah,
last season, right? Let's go out
yeah.
and do what I can do, go out on top, since I know I'm not going to go pro, right? And that would be the incentive.
And if you're still on the team after that long, then you've probably played for a long time in your life, and you know how fun and the camaraderie you get with a team. It just, to not want to have that in your last year of playing that game you've played your entire life, it just doesn't make sense to me. That the personal desire to not play doesn't make sense. So if
Oh, I get what you're saying too, but like, I also see where Sanders is coming from, of like, hey, like if you're gonna go through and like hurt my team and your teammates as a whole, okay, well, I'm gonna hit you where it hurts, and that's your wallet,
right, and
because
to
you're
be
getting
fair
paid
too,
to
like
come out and do this.
right, and a lot of those guys, in the college level getting those NIL deals, they're not like normal college kids, right? College kids are racking up hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. Probably not that much, but tens of thousands of dollars of debt.
I mean, depending what school you go to, yes,
Sure,
but
to get a degree. And these guys are getting paid and have a scholarship to
yep.
play a
And
sport.
that's the thing too. I don't think he was talking about NIL deal money itself, because I don't know how the hell he'd even be able to take that away. But what I think was, I don't know if any of these schools are paying these athletes. I mean, I'm not a college athlete and wasn't. I would imagine that would be it has to happen if he's going, oh, I can, we'll dock your week pay, basically, right?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know if the school's paying him a little bit too on top of NIL deals and stuff, and he's like, okay, cool, like you just lost a week's tuition or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
Which,
maybe it's focused on, scholarship money or
yeah,
books
that's the
or
only thing I
room and
can think
board.
of.
Yeah,
Yeah, they pull that money. Okay, cool. You're not paying. We're paying for you to go to college here for you to play football. You're not playing football. You
right.
don't get paid. You don't get paid if you don't go to work. And this is your job, right? Like, if you're a D1 athlete, you get hurt, there goes your scholarship.
Yeah.
Like, it's gone. Like, sorry, don't know what to tell you. Like, you signed to play football, you can't play football. We have no need for you. As cutthroat as that sounds, that's the reality of it, right? Especially
Yeah.
of D1 athletes, is like, that's, hey, you knew what you were getting, what you were signing up for. Like, oh shit, I can play at a D1 level, get a lot of eyes and attention on me, But if I get hurt, that's the end of the road right there as far as me getting the scholarship and everything else. Now I got to figure out if I want to keep going here or, hopefully come back next year, keep the scholarship, whatever it may be. So I just have going back to the original convo on this was I feel like Dion, and he said it, is going to have a hard time coaching grown men with that have the mentality of like, oh, I'm getting a paycheck no matter what.
Yeah, and that mentality is what I want to see more of in the professional level of those guys that are like, hey, I'm already making a check. I don't care what happens. I don't need to play, and I'm still going to make a handful of money. And that's how a lot of these guys are, right? They get hurt, quote unquote, get hurt, so they don't have to play, and they're sure they're not making their game check, as it's called, but they're still making a shitload more money than. I mean, they're making a year's worth of wages that most Americans make in a game per
Yep.
snap, or just sitting on the bench. So a lot of those games are those, professional bench warmers. That's what I'll call them. And I disagree with that. I don't think that those guys should have a place in professional sports. But unfortunately, when you sign a contract, there's not much you can do about it unless you
Nope.
pay them everything that you're going to if they were to sit the rest of the year and cut them, which
Yeah. And then,
you
it hurts
only
the
really
team.
see in extensive circumstances against a teammate that's really breaking the rules and is just like outright rebelling against their team that he signed with.
Well, I mean, look at the dude from San Fran this year, was like, nope, I don't want to go in. And
Yeah,
so instead of them cutting him so that he could go sign with another team and get paid, they suspended him without pay for 3 games. And then they're going to cut him at the end of the season so that he can't get paid from the team,
yeah.
which I think is a smart move. Like,
It is a very smart move. But the only downside to that for a team that can handle that when you're in the later half of the season and your playoff run is shot, cool. You can eat that roster spot and say I don't need to worry about this guy because he's not going to, tank my season because my season's already over. But
mhm,
when you get a teammate that's holding out at the beginning half of the season because they want more pay, which we're seeing more and more every week, or excuse me, every
yep,
year, that's
yep.
something that I cannot stand about because they're just so entitled because they want more money. They think they deserve more money, and they're not just all about the team. They're not just going to show up. They miss workouts. They miss this. They miss that. CD Lamb did it, and look at his performance. He's a great wide receiver, but look at how well he helped the Cowboys by holding out this year, right? It's not about an individual effort. If CD got paid more money, which they eventually did pay him, he's not taking the Cowboys single handedly to the Super Bowl. My point is, take your fucking paycheck and instead of asking for more money, maybe ask the team to spend more money on another player that'll help your chances instead. Because
True.
you getting more money is not going to result in you getting higher performance.
True. I mean, I definitely do see both sides of this, right? Like Brady did it a lot, hey, I'll take a pay cut, get me, a better offensive tackle, or get me some better defensive help, or get me a receiver, right? So we can go out and win Super Bowls too. But on the flip side of that, I mean, hell with Brady at that point, like that dude. I mean, granted, all these professional athletes are making way more money than most people know what to do with, right? But that was so late in Brady's career too. At that point, where like with all of his deals and endorsements and everything else, that it like, all right, cool. Like, what's $5 million compared to $50 million? You know what I mean? So like, I could see that, and I also see the flip side of it as like if you're a player, right, in your your prime, your peak, right, athletic career at the professional level, why not take the chance and bet on yourself and at least get paid? Because at the end of the day, when you retire, those checks stop coming in.
Yeah, and sure, I
And
can I
I'm
can
not
understand
defending
that.
people that are like holding out and shit. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not defending that whatsoever. But I'm just saying I can see it from their side. Be like, okay, like, what's coming after football, right? So I'm going to try to cash in while I have the opportunity to.
Right, and that's where I think the biggest problem that I have comes into play, where they're not thinking of. I mean, I can't say they're not because I don't know what they are thinking of, but they're not putting the team first, in my opinion. They're
Yep.
putting
Nope. I
themselves
agree.
first, and it's just not fair to the fan base. It's not fair to your teammates, your coaching staff, the owners. because the owners and the coaching staff, they took a lot of time and effort to get you on the team. They have faith in that you're gonna, carry the team to the next, the next championship or Super Bowl or what have you, the next goal that they have in mind, whether it's long term or short term. And to be honest, it's just selfish, and it's okay to have those moments, but in the sense that you get like you hold out and you don't play a game with your team like the guy from San Francisco, um, that hurts because
Mhm.
now you're forcing the next guy up who's probably been waiting a long time to take your spot the right way into the game. Um, and sure, he may be the next best thing, but the fact that he didn't earn that spot the right way may have like an effect on him and his ego, or the team chemistry that y'all have been working on for 18 weeks of the year, plus training camps and preseason, and if you make it to the postseason, then even more, you
Yeah.
know. So I don't know,
I
and
I get
then you
that.
look at it too, like, so let's say that sure, the goal is about you, bet on yourself, right? Bet,
Mm.
add, that the factor of um the after football factor that you were talking about. Well, why isn't it that you don't see a lot of my knowledge, you don't see anybody in the Hall of Fame that's done this, right? The Hall of Fame is not about just stats. Stats have a lot of it, but you look at people that are good for the sport and role models for their team and for their city and their fan base and maybe even the entire country in a lot of aspects. And those are the guys that you want in the Hall of Fame, not guys that are like, "Hey, I'm making $100 million less than I want to, so I'm not going to play the game because of it." So there's
Yeah.
that part of it too, that a lot of people, that's long term goal on the portion of that.
That's true, yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, does every pro football player have the expectation or like the dream of being like, I want to go in the Hall of Fame? Probably not,
Well,
realistically.
I mean, maybe not. Maybe after their first couple of seasons, they're like, it's might not possible. I'm not up to it. But I mean,
And
at
at
least
that
when you
point,
join, when you get into the league, right, as a rookie, like your first couple of years, that probably is a lot of people, if not everybody's overall goal or expectation of like, I'm gonna set this to myself, and I think I can do it, and I'm gonna
you just said it
show
right
that.
there, though. So in your first couple of years, right? So you're still on that rookie contract, right? Of like, all right, cool,
Right,
I'm gonna go
and
out and I'm gonna,
but that's where we see a lot of these holdouts, is guys that are coming off of their rookie contract, and or in some cases they're still in their rookie contract and they want more money because they played really well in their first 2 years, and going into their third or fourth year they think they're worth a lot more, but they're only getting their rookie paycheck, which that's why it's called a rookie contract, because you have to have a long track record of being a good player to be worth a long term, high paying contract. Nobody's just going to sign you to a 10-year, 100, 200, $300 million deal just because you had one good season or two good seasons, right? You need to have those long history of being a consistently good player before people are willing to spend that kind of money on you. And that's where a lot of these 1 year deals come into play, because people just don't have that consistency.
true. I mean, look at what Mahomes got, a 10-year, oh, excuse me, $400 million contract, something like that.
Yeah, but again, consistent player, right? Look at someone else on his offense, and Juju Smith-Schuster, for example, right? No long-term deal, no high-paying contract. He may have had a shot coming out of Pittsburgh, but you know, it's just
True. I mean,
it's not there.
but we got way off topic on this, but I think that's the issue. I think that going back to Deion Sanders and stuff, which is how we got onto that convo, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it's at this point we're just voicing opinions about stuff now, which I mean we're pretty much at that time of the season anyway, right? That I think that he's gonna have a hard time coming in. Like I said, he's flat out said he's like I'm not gonna be able to coach grown men that all they're focusing on is a paycheck. He's like that's just not gonna happen. At least with like these college players and stuff, I can help mold them into outstanding young men, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's more what he's focused on right now is developing the next generation of young men, young individuals, whatever, coaching on and off the field, right? So, and I think he takes more pride in that than I think he would going into a professional locker room and having to rip everybody apart because hey, we're paying you X amount of money and you're not doing your fucking job.
Right, and I think that, like you said, the expectation isn't there for the college players to have that mentality, but when you see it at the professional level, it's the expectation is that they should want to be there.
Yeah.
Sometimes college players do what they do because they're good at it. Sometimes they just do it for a scholarship, for free education. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not
not at all
saying like, don't play into your talents, but when you're a professional football player, that is your talent and that is your job. So that is what you need to do for money and you need to play it well. You can't just give up on your team because you don't want to be there. And if you don't want to be there, then you shouldn't be there. And a coach or a team should just cut you.
Yeah. But then at that point, though, you run the risk of getting, waived and picked up and getting paid by another team. So you're kind of just re-encouraging the bad habit. But which like I said, I like what San Fran did with that, that player when he did that. And I think, a lot of the players I think would agree too, especially when you're watching all the interviews and stuff with them. But I think we'll hit the last little section we have. Because I think we rambled on about that one enough. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a lot.
No, it was good. It was good. It was a good back and forth discussion. It's always nice to hear, other people's thoughts and, and see how other people look at it and stuff. I think for the most part, we pretty much agreed on all of it. But you have on here that Texans player shoving the special teams coach after that failed secured fumble on that kickoff.
Yeah, did you see that play at all?
I saw it.
I didn't see the initial shove. It was I got I see the feed and the video of it after the game was over. But it just looked like just a bitch move on the guy's part. He was it Boyd? What's his name? Boyd. Chris Boyd. He's a defensive player. Was on a kickoff and he was the only one around. He was the last line of defense and he made a tackle and forced the fumble and he didn't have a chance to recover it and no one was near him to pick it up. So I think that was kind of why he was upset about it. But now you've got teammates and coaches even saying that, I mean, the coach, D'Amico Ryans, said that he doesn't think the push was in a disrespectful manner. And
I mean, I don't know how you would look at it any other. Even if you just saw that, like, just that clip just out of nowhere, you'd be like, I don't know about that. Like, I get it being heated, but like, yeah, how can you be mad at the special teams coach if he's not on the field trying to get the fumble? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's not something that that's not something that I would expect to see, and it's not like a part of the game where you're like, I'm gonna, fire up my team by shoving a coach.
yeah,
Like the special teams coach didn't do shit on that play. Like, if there's anything, you need to figure out which guy in the formation or in the play lost their dropped coverage or whatever the problem was. I don't really know that much about kickoff defense, but at what point in the play broke down for you to have that kind of freak out because you forced the fumble? Like, good for you for forcing the fumble. Your team didn't cover. You recover. So what's the deal?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a bad look, and yeah, I mean, I get being fired up, and obviously want to win a playoff game and move on to the AFC Championship and etc. But pushing coaches and stuff is not the way to go about doing it, right? That's a quick way, in my opinion, my thought process, to being like, okay, cool, I'm going to bench you then. But I'm not a coach. I'm not a special teams coach for the NFL by any stretch of the imagination. But
Yeah.
and I get they had a bunch of bullshit penalties called on them. Our little segue into the next random stuff on our
Yeah.
script. um, so I get being frustrated about that and wanting to vent frustration, but yeah, I feel like the coach isn't the guy to be taking that frustration out off, whether it was in a disrespectful manner or not. Either way, and speaking of all these bad calls, Aikman mentioned it too, that it was during on the broadcast that the calls in that game were
Terrible.
clearly one-sided. Like, I've never seen somebody get a roughing the passer call as the quarterback runs out of bounds and then he barely just kind of shoves them.
Yeah. While
And
he was still in bounds, by the way.
yeah, and the player just kind of flops and then gets the penalty drawn on him. Meanwhile, you look at the Lions game, Jared Goff's out there getting thrown around like a rag doll and nothing.
Yeah. I've kind of tired of the one-sided affairs of calls going in Kansas City's favor, and I think it's not helping their hatred of people's opinions, where KC just gets favored and babied. There was another play where Mahomes was still in the motion of throwing the ball, and he got hit in front, and he didn't get tackled; he just got hit. Like, the guy let up because he knew that he didn't have the ball anymore, and he still, hit him because of his forward momentum. But I mean, it was a bang bang throw hit kind of play. It wasn't like one of those plays where he throws it and the guy's still running at him. Like, he was already in his face when the ball was released, and they got a penalty for that. And then you get the announcers that go on the air and they say well, they can review these plays and pick up that flag if they want to, and they didn't. They called it roughing the passer, which I did not think it was. I did not think it was a roughing the passer play.
No, it's funny because I know exactly what play you were talking about too, and I saw a thing too. The main head coach of that game, or the ref that game, the head ref. The Chiefs are 7-0. I don't remember the ref's name, but the Chiefs are 7-0, and he's the head ref of a Kansas City Chiefs game.
Somebody must be listening to my my DraftKings, or say DraftKings, my shitty bets of the week with my DraftKings odds on there. That's probably why he's letting Casey win all the time.
Gotta go the opposite of what Zach said. Opposite, go. But I mean, it's bad when even the announcers are like, this is getting ridiculous. This is getting excessive. A bunch of the Texans players said the same thing too post game press conferences, and it doesn't help. Yeah, like you said, people being like, oh, if you three-peat, right, for the first time ever, and you do it legitimately, I don't think anybody would care. I really don't. But if you three-peat the way that it seems to be going now, and you breathe in Mahomes' bubble and it's a penalty, then that a lot of people are going to be quite upset about that. But I mean,
not the way you want your legacy to be remembered, especially because up to the last year, they've had a really solid team that I would have agreed with them, if a lot of people were saying that they're one of the best teams in football. But now I think they just happen to squeak by in a lot of cases, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast.
Yep.
So I will stand firm on saying that they are not anywhere close to being one of the best teams in football. They are just one of the luckiest, and sometimes that's what you need to carry you through into at least a championship round.
I mean, how sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, I guess, but
yeah, and I'm sure that that's how Kansas City feels after a lot of their games this regular season, but
yeah,
it only goes
and
so
then
far.
Yeah, you absolutely can only go so far, but I'll let you talk about our last talking point on the randoms.
Yeah,
random
so our last point is that Baltimore had an opportunity to tie the game at the least, which we talked about a little earlier, where they could have tied the game. They had a touchdown scored in with a minute and was it 40 some or 20 some left in the game. They were down 24-22. They go for the 2 point, and it was a great pass to Mark Andrews, somebody that you're expecting to make those kinds of plays, and he drops it at the goal line for the 2 point conversion. He dropped the ball. It hit him in the stomach, and they lost the game. Buffalo, I put on the script here. I said Buffalo survives because Baltimore should have tied that game. Everybody was expecting after Baltimore made the touchdown. Obviously, they had to go for the 2 point. It was just a shoe-in, right? Okay,
Yeah.
now what? Now you're expecting it. You see Josh Allen gets his helmet on the sideline. He's expecting the ball with a tie game and a minute and some change left to go win it, to at least put his team down range of a field goal to win it, or if not, at the very least send it to overtime. But to make a good effort of trying to get that ball, downfield to make that last shot at winning the game. And so, I said it earlier that Buffalo didn't win the game. Baltimore lost the game. And I don't know, let's say Baltimore does tie the game. I'm not saying that just because they tie it, that they will win it. But if you don't tie it, you can't win it. Right?
Yep. Doesn't push any opportunity.
Right. So you don't make that, if you don't, make that fundamental play, you take the game out of your hands and it's over.
Yep.
So at that point, had you tied it, you still would have had some input on the outcome of that game by your defense and potentially stopping, Josh Allen, and at worst going to overtime and having another, lucky, coin toss, because they would have been able to call the coin toss being the visitors.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, like we said earlier, man, coulda, woulda, shoulda. It sucks. Mark Andrews feels bad about it, but
yeah,
Lamar said, it's not just a one person thing. I mean, how you said it earlier too. It's not an individual thing. It's a whole team effort. And obviously the team had plenty of drop passes, and obviously Lamar with the pick and the fumble earlier in the game too didn't really help any of that. But it is frustrating. I can see on their part, especially because. I feel like they felt like they had the team to win, especially with Derrick Henry having the season that he had, and just everybody on that team pretty much doing what they needed to up until the time that it mattered the most.
Yeah, and that's where that nut up or shut up kind of clutch mentality shows up in postseason games. But now you've got guys that are learning for experience, getting postseason experience and learning. And look at the 4 remaining teams. 3 of them are, chronic playoff run teams.
Yep.
Washington is the first time they've met in a championship series in 30 years, 34
1991.
Years.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's insane that you get that you talk a lot about guys are so clutch here and there, but it's a different type of clutch. You got regular season clutch and you got postseason clutch,
which is when it matters the most.
And you think about these plays. I mean, really think about and dissect these plays. A postseason clutch really just means someone who can do fundamental football in chronic succession, because they play every week for the last 21 weeks, and now they need to just continue that basic I can catch the football fundamental.
Fundamental football. I was just about to say it.
So
yeah,
it just didn't happen. Unfortunate, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, chips fell where they were supposed
to.
The one
thing, the one time it's needed, the one quote unquote clutch point is when you just needed to make that fundamental catch. And it looked like a tough catch, kind of what he was trying to do with it, because he was just in front of the goal line. I think he was at the 1 or 2 yard line. So I can see what he was trying to do with the ball. He's trying to catch it and fall backwards, running sideways. Don't throw me in there. I wouldn't be able to make that fucking play, but
I'm not a professional athlete.
I'm just going to sit here and talk shit, and that's it. I'm not going to at all be put in that situation. So,
Yeah,
you know,
it's true. Absolutely, I get it. Yeah, I agree. But well, I mean, we've rambled on for I think a little over an hour now.
yeah, it's been closer to an hour and 10 or so.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what happens when we're at the end of the season, and we kind of just wing the script a little bit because there's really not much to talk about, especially now that we're dwindling down to less and less teams each week. So,
yeah,
it's been a good week as usual. It's been fun. It was fun running the 24 with you, and fun doing the podcast as we do every Monday.
yeah, very fun. I think we're making something special here, Sully.
Yeah, and next season I think it'll be even better from us next season once we kind of have some off time to kind of tighten up the the loose ends and figure everything out a little bit more, whether it be video on the YouTube side or even just little clips and stuff on there. But the specialness will come more on later on down the season.
More professional looking and
yeah,
maybe sponsored by DraftKings for Zach's Shitty Bets of the Week or something.
Hey,
like that.
maybe we can make that happen. But yeah, it's been fun. Again, I will see you next week as usual.
Yes, sir. Next week, we'll talk about who's going to the Super Bowl and some bets and more draft talks about the next two teams to get locked up and
and
maybe
the
even
expectations.
some coach talks. And just looking forward to the next season. And also
Yep,
throw some Pro Bowl talk in there too.
Oh yeah, we could absolutely. But as usual, it's been fun. Thank you everybody for listening. Like, comment, subscribe. As per usual, if you guys have any issues with the ZSBOTTW, as always, you can email us at pigskinprognosis@gmail.com or leave a comment down below and I'll let Zach directly address it. As usual, everybody be safe, be healthy, and have a good rest of your week. We will be back next week.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye.